I just baked an apple pie, which means I now have the peels of approximately 6 small apples. We are trying to be environmentally friendly, so the best thing we can do is put them in the compost, right? Right? When I first started naturally dyeing, my aunt once sent me an article of an artist who dyed wool with apple peels. At the time, it just seemed too good to be true, and frankly, it still does. The most heard advice when it comes to natural dyeing is don't dye with stuff you can eat. Food stuff isn't good dye stuff. But while I was making this cake, I got intrigued. What if that artist was onto something? So I went to my very good friend Google and found actually scientific evidence that apple peels are good dye stuff. Reputedly light and dye fast. I will link the article, or at least the summary of the article that I found in the description. But of course, I will not trust it until I do my own experimentations. So these peels of these 6 apples will become dye. And then they end up in the compost. From a previous dyeing experiment, I still have this mordanted Kempisch schaap. This was mordanted a couple of weeks ago with alum, 10% weight of fabric, so approximately 10% of what this wool weighed back then. Now I have put it into a bucket of hot water for 2 reasons. Firstly, wet wool absorbs dye better, and secondly, so that it doesn't felt when it gets into the warm dye bath. I've got 2 types of apples actually. This is a Jonagoret, which is like more of a stripy apple. And then I also have the peels of a very, very red apple. I think this is a Primo, I'm not sure, but it doesn't really matter because the scientific experimentation document paper that I read just mentioned domestic apples. This is a domestic apple, just different types of it. Don't think I will be using the cores though. That's not much color in them. Kind of want to wager that this is going to be the best smelling dye I have ever made. Warm apple juice? I mean, just add some cinnamon and Now all that's left are some apple cores, and they can go into the compost immediately. Now even though I've said that it's probably the best smelling dye I will have ever made, I will still advise you to ventilate dyeing space. It's just a really good habit when it comes to dyeing of all kind. Just airflow. A space that doesn't necessarily need ventilating right now is my kitchen, because that cake looks and smells delicious. I hope it also tastes like that. So my apple peels have been going for about an hour, which is the recommended time I see everywhere. What the hell is this though? That's not an apple peel. So, as I said, an hour is the recommended time, though I still see some... Oops. Although I see some apple peels that clearly have not given up their color yet, so I'm going to leave this going for a little bit longer. But as you can see, the water is a very lovely orange. I hope this stays. Like, it has some red tints, and in my experience, a lot of red tints turn green once you put the alum into contact with it. We will see, but for now, it's looking promising. Forbidden apple juice. Or well, actual apple juice, I guess. Anyway, that's not a very deep color, so I'm going to start with just a little bit of wool, just to maximize the color uptake that little bit of wool can do. And now we wait. And now those were only the peels of 6 tiny apples, like smaller than my fist. I am well versed enough in the world of natural dyeing to know that I should not expect a deep nor vibrant color on a lot of wool. That's why I put in so little an amount of wool in my dye bath. This is going to give me the best sample of a result. I'm actually just sampling this dye stuff. Like, is it actually possible? For sampling, I don't need a large amount. But if this experiment shows that apple peels are a great dye stuff, next time I will put them in a plastic bag and save them in a freezer until I have quite a large amount. And then we can make a bigger, more vibrant dye bath that can probably dye a lot more wool than we are currently dyeing. But also, you know me, this little bit of wool will probably get used in some kind of chaos project. That's why I never mind and actually really like dyeing small samples. You can just blend them together and have the most chaotic, interesting wool, or well, yarn, ever. I hope this apple dyed yarn, if it does dye in the end, will find a place in something really chaotic. And now our peels can go into the compost. All of them, please. So, my little bit of wool has been going on heat in this apple peel dye bath for, I actually didn't count how many hours, but long enough that there isn't enough dye anymore for it to float around freely. And kind of as suspected, this is a pale beige, I don't know, maybe a little bit of a yellow tint. What I'm going to do is just leave it in there overnight, put the lid on so that the remaining heat, you know, can get trapped in there without me having to keep the little stove running when I'm not at home or sleeping or, you know, whatever. And we'll see you tomorrow. We are 24 hours further, so let's look at our results. Also, yes, it is past 6 o'clock in the evening. That means that it is dark and cold, and I am transformed into a complete wool goblin because I want all the cozy. Yeah, let's check out the wool, for we are wool goblins, of course. Yeah, that actually has turned into a very soft orange. I don't know if the camera captured that with all the electric lighting, but wow. Wow. That has picked up a lot of color for just sitting in there overnight. Let's rinse it and then maybe we can get all those sticky bits of apple off. I will of course return to you with a better shot once this is completely dry, but this is a very promising result. Yeah, very soft light orange from just apple peels. Now, there's also still some orange in the dye bath. I'm going to put a second little bit of wool into my dye bath, heat it up, let it go overnight again, and then I'll show you the color of the second dye bath. And maybe I should just for now, like take a little bit and also do an iron after bath, just because I want to see it, just because my interest is piqued. Welcome in daylight. And while I think on the viewfinder it still shows up a little bit pale, this gives maybe a better estimate of the color that my peels of my 6 little apples gave. Like you can see, it is nearing the color of the leaves on the ground. It's a really soft, beautiful orange. And then this is with the added iron. Again, a really beautifully soft green. those two little samples alone are enough to get me excited to actually collect apple peels in the future, like peel my apples, store the peels in the freezer until a later date, until I have enough to, dye a larger sample. Really soft, yeah, like a powdery kind of color. So pretty. This might in the end just show it as it actually is, like that's orange, right? That's a really pretty orange. And after a couple of days' time, we now also have the second dye bath results. So for the orange, it's a slightly paler one, it's more yellow. However, I also put a little bit of this in the iron afterbath. Why is it darker? Why is it also so green? I have spent my entire summer trying to get the perfect green while I was actually just putting all the good green in my mouth. And then after I pulled those results out yesterday, I noticed that actually my dye bath was darker than ever, so I just put the rest of that mordanted Kempisch schaap in there. Apple seems to be a dye stuff that just keeps on giving. I want to remind you, these were just the peels of 6 tiny apples. Like the apples that you'd find too small to eat yourself, so you just put them in a cake. Certainly I must collect apple peels now. Freezer space, be prepared to be filled with apple peels. Now before I show you the results of our third dye bath of this apple peel experiment, I want to do a little bit something else. I don't know if you remember filling this jar back in May. It's November 3rd. I think it might be time to empty it and look at the results. I have thoroughly forgotten about this jar, and I can see that the water level has dropped, which does not bode well. We'll see what we get when we open this jar. Okay, I had expected actually for it to be moldy because there was air exposed to all of the things, but seems to be okay. Meh. Look at our very different tints of yellow. Still need to rinse this, of course, and there still is a lot of VM in there, but yeah, that's actually very exciting how many different tints of yellow there are, how many vibrant tints. Like, of course, the onion peels are once again highlighter yellow, but this is not as cool toned yellow as I expected from all the yarrow and the dock leaves. And it smells very medicinal, very almost like toothpaste. And this tree branch that's been sticking out all the time has now become my designated fluff drying branch. So I'm going to let this fluff dry, and I'll show you the dry third dye bath fluff. So if you remember, these are the colors from the first dye bath, a very powdery orange and a powdery green when I added some iron. Very lovely. Then came dye bath number 2, which is more of a yellow, but then the green was darker. So that indicated to me that there still is a lot of pigment in my dye bath, and I was correct, because remember this is the first one, in which I only added a little bit of wool. And now I'm going to show you the third one, in which I just added the rest of my pre-scoured and pre-mordanted fluff, which is at least as much as the first and second dye bath combined. how is this practically more vibrant than dye bath number 1? It's not as orange, but it's brighter, like it shines more, like this is more wool. And supposedly there should be less dye, right? I don't know. And then also, like, just for comparison, the green I got from that. So once more in order: first dye bath, second dye bath, third dye bath. It's that I don't have any pre-scoured, pre-mordanted fluff right now, because this makes me think that a fourth dye bath is also possible. What is happening with apple peels? Why are they so potent? Anyway, I am not a chemist and I get lots of things wrong in my videos all of the time, so I don't know the answer. If you know the answer, let me know. Why is apple peel such a potent dye stuff? And I shall now start collecting apple peels in my freezer for future dye experiments, because this is amazing. I've got no other words for it. It's amazing. I mean, can you look at this and think it's not amazing? We had such a small sample of dye stuff, and it is so bright. So that was it for our little foray into apple peel dyeing. I am thoroughly amazed and I'm very happy with it. Expect to see more of it in the future. Anyway, if you like these kind of fiber shenanigans, then maybe you could like, comment or subscribe, but of course that is all up to you. And as for me, I will see you in a next video, but before we do that, maybe you could look at some more dyeing shenanigans. Bye!